Hello, everyone. Today we're talking with Jeff Tollefson, President and CEO of the Minnesota Technology Association, an organization you might know from its previous name, the Minnesota High Tech Association. The Minnesota Technology Association works to accelerate growth, innovation, and the development of a strong, inclusive tech ecosystem in Minnesota. So, hi, Jeff.
Hey, Peter. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing great as well. It's good to see the new backdrop of your new home. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. So let's talk about jobs because with unemployment, rising by the week and now reaching what are going to be historic highs, coming out of just 3 months ago when we were looking at historic lows. Let's talk about jobs. While we've seen the unemployment rate rise and job postings decrease across the board, it's not been true or as true for tech jobs. So can you talk to us about what's special about tech and what you see happening?
Yeah. As we've all kind of seen, tech is really what's keeping our economy afloat right now. It's enabling the remote work that so many of us are forced to do. It's empowering the distance learning that is allowing students to stay on track academically, telemedicine, connecting patients and doctors, and just the supply chains that rely increasingly on technology. So while technology jobs have been recently impacted, we've seen just within the last few weeks, the number of tech jobs declining where it had been on the increase every week before then. There are still a lot of job openings. Actually, through the third week of March through the first week of May, in Minnesota, there were 26,000 IT job postings available in our state. So it is still an area where that's in demand for these in-demand skills. And we can talk more about what some of those skills are that people are looking for.
Well, yeah, let's do that. When we talk about certificates or college degrees or even like personal attributes, what are the skills and maybe roles that are most in demand? And have you seen a change in that demand since the start of the crisis?
Yeah, so there has been some demand. So there are some jobs that continue to go up and are in demand. Things like security professionals, as we all are increasingly working remotely on our own devices, security becomes an issue in terms of access control, things of that nature. We're also seeing an increase in the number of service desk support needs. If you don't have the person that can go to the cubicle you're around the corner and ask for help, there's a lot more need of printer connectivity, issues like that is requiring increased number of service desk professionals. And there continues to be a broad level of demand that continues to increase for software developers. And software really is what drives our economy today, whether it's the large enterprise resource planning systems that enable business processes to just the apps that connect and websites connecting people and businesses. It's software that enables all of that. And so software developers, I believe the number is 7,600 open positions at the beginning of this month, just in the state of Minnesota. So that is going to be an area that will continue to be of interest and in demand. So in terms of what that requires today, most software postings, I believe 85% of the postings during that period I described for software engineers, most were looking for a bachelor's degree in at least 2 years of experience. So that bachelor's degree attainment is still a limiting factor, but we're seeing that begin to change as more of the coding boot camps are really skilling up software developers in a very impactful way. In terms of the soft skills, the essential skills that people are looking for, it ranges from things that are common sense like initiative and responsibility, collaboration and teamwork, communication, written and verbal, teamwork, but also things like design thinking and creativity, I have seen even those that have maybe had a bachelor's degree in music composition finding roles in software because of how they're able to put abstract ideas together. So there's no one background that prepares you well to be good in developing software. And through an 8 to 12 week boot camp, you can actually take those innate skills that you have and turn it into something that is actually immediately hireable through getting a certification.
Well, and let's plan to talk more about that offline in the coming weeks, because as we see growth, in the tech space, we see a lot of demand destruction happening in other occupation, other parts of the economy. And so thinking about how we can facilitate that transfer of people who are working in one part of the economy, into tech, is probably something we're going to need to be working on, with some urgency.
Absolutely.
I mean, recognizing all this, so in the 2020 MSP indicator dashboard that will be released in June, we're going to add a new indicator to track the annual growth in tech jobs. And that's a recognition of how important tech is to our overall economy and the disproportionate impact that our tech workforce has in our region's competitiveness. So we've been running the numbers on the growth of tech jobs in our region and finding that we're still lagging many of our peers in growth. We have a very sizable existing base of tech workforce, but the growth of that workforce is behind Denver and Dallas and Boston, Charlotte, and others. So MinTech is made up of dozens of the largest tech employers in the state. Help us understand what our region can do to be more competitive in growing tech jobs and growing and attracting companies that rely heavily on tech.
Yeah, so as you look at some of the data that's published by CompTIA, which is kind of the big industry association for information technology professionals, their most recent cyber states report had Minnesota with 251,000 tech employees in our state. And that's a combination of those that have a tech occupation, as well as those that are employed by, tech companies. So if you're a tech company like Digital River or SPS Commerce, you're in marketing or accounting, you kind of count because you're part of this tech economy. Mm-hmm. But we only increased from 2018 by about 5,000 jobs. So our rate of growth has not been what we had wanted. I do believe this is going to begin to change. And already seeing how remote work is being not only allowed but encouraged by a lot of Silicon Valley firms. Twitter, Square have said they're just going to, everybody can work remotely if you're able to. Right. And it's forcing a lot of employees in those companies to rethink, why am I living in this expensive Silicon Valley? Because I don't have to travel to my office anymore. Mm-hmm. Why don't I come home to Minnesota? Why don't I find another tech center that has much more to offer? So I think that we will begin to see shifts. And I truly believe the Twin Cities will be a beneficiary of that talent, thinking about a great place to live and work, raise a family, and that will begin to change.
Well, that sounds like an opportunity for Make It MSP.
It is indeed. And you're already doing great work in that regard.
We'll follow up on that. So MinTech's mission, which I mentioned earlier, includes a reference to developing an inclusive tech system. Yeah. Can you say more about why that's so critical and what it means for your priorities and your work?
Yeah, so some of the research that's been conducted by local workforce group called Real Time Talent, they've projected just in the 7-county metro of the Twin Cities that we will have a gap of IT employees of about 10,500 by the second quarter of 2024. And that's a combination of demographic shifts, workforce imbalances, because as we have baby boomers that are beginning to retire in large numbers, we have a next generation that is not only more diverse, but less prepared than maybe what we would like them to see. So it's incumbent upon us as a community to think about how do we inspire youth or other adults that have not been in the world of tech to think about STEM careers. How do we prepare them for those roles? And I think we really need to much more intentionally look at historically underrepresented and overlooked talent pools. And one of the things that's going to change as remote work becomes more of the norm as opposed to the exception, and even that term work from home, I would say in a couple of years, that's not even going to be part of our conversation because it's just work. And it's hybrid, it's flexible, it's harmony. It's not going to be something you have to ask to do. I think employees will ask, why do I have to come into an office? And so if you take away transportation as a limiting factor of where you work, a lot of our residents of North Minneapolis and the inner core are sometimes shut out of opportunities working at corporate campuses that are increasingly in the suburbs because of lack of transportation. And if we can enable them to have access to technology, there's no reason that work can't take place at home. So I think there's an opportunity to really become much more inclusive in our thinking. And just in general, there's so many studies from McKinsey and others that shows how organizations that embrace inclusive workplaces and have diversity of thought and resources perform better. And so we want to continue to help companies think differently about their hiring, think differently how you're skilling and developing and ultimately retaining those critical resources. So it is a big part of what we're trying to do. And there's the old phrase of, it's not just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. Yeah. We have to do this as a community. Yeah. It's really a social and economic imperative.
I mean, there's maybe a theme here about making sure that we're kind of keeping up with reality, whether that's the nature of work, or make sure our language is tracking with, how work really happens today. I mean, part of that keeping up with reality is that, the growth of tech, the force of that in our economy, the demand that it's driving, and changing demographics mean that, if we are not growing tech jobs and ensuring that students of color and people of color are, moving, in large numbers into those roles because of changing demographics, we're just not going to be able to compete. I mean, that's where the world is going.
Yeah. And I think another kind of a shift that we might begin to see has to also do about how learning happens, and it's kind of education versus learning. We have an education system that historically has been very, very front-end loaded. You think about, 0 to age 18 or 22, that's where all of your education typically occurs. And then there's very little that occurs thereafter. And I think we're going to see more of a shift to accessing employment earlier and continually learning. In a tech role, that has to happen. You have to stay current. So I think there's going to be opportunities where the access to a college degree based on your financial resources and so forth doesn't become a rate limiting factor in accessing a tech job, because you'll be able to get a quick certification, get in a role, continually to upskill yourself, and have companies paying to do that. There's one great example in our community in Target Corporation. They have a very thoughtful CIO in Mike McNamara who has really created a wonderful digital transformation at the company. But they have embraced 50 days of learning a year. And so that's essentially 1 day a week, where the engineers are really encouraged and given the space to continue to learn and grow, build their skills. Whether it's something called an EMIP program, the Engineering Managers Immersion Program, or others. But I think the days of past, where it used to be had a lot of on-the-job training within your company and corporate skilling, is coming back. And I think that's going to be just a wonderful thing for opportunities for those that might not have had the benefit of social and wealth and capital to access college.
Yeah. Well, so in the last few minutes, we've talked about how work has fundamentally changed, how the boundaries of education and work have fallen down, how the makeup of our community is rapidly changing. Yeah. So, this is life now. This is reality, and we should probably go and get back to work. so we can we can keep up with this. But this is a conversation that we've been having, you and I've been having, and Greater Mississippi and MinTech have been in deep dialogue on talent and a number of other issues in the past number of months, and there's a lot of work to do. Thanks for everything you're doing, you and your team, and we look forward to running hard at all the themes we just talked about in the months ahead.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Peter, for all the work that you do. And, and in the end, despite how difficult this pandemic is right now on the health of our communities and citizens, it really is forcing us to accelerate a future that many of us were trying to push for anyway.
Right.
And so I believe that technology is going to continue to enable and empower and drive our economy going forward. And we need all the hands and arms and brains we can get in the tech field. So we look forward to reskilling those that are out of work and engaging them in much more productive ways.
Well, let's go and get on that work. So great to see you. Thanks for everything, and we'll talk soon.
Good to see you, Peter.